we we lost you there for a little bit. We are back up. My Wi-Fi for whatever reason in 2020, my Wi-Fi on my phone cannot be on at the same time as the Wi-Fi on my computer. Otherwise, I'm going to get booted off the Wi-Fi in my computer. It's ridiculous.
Really?
Yeah, it's insane. So I did hear your answer a little bit ago regarding the 20th anniversary. You had posted something actually earlier today on the Fox Valley Whiskey Society website about the 20th anniversary, and it looked like I saw something that they were going to be adding some new products to the Glencairn line. What else is in that line?
Well, I can tell you what we have currently. I can't tell you what. There are a few kind of really cool things that are coming up.
Sure.
And it's funny to get excited about, glass and crystal. If you told me even like 10 years ago, oh, you're going to get excited about this crystal. Yeah, I guess I will. So, like I said, Glencairn has been around a long time. They've had a number of really interesting things. I'm not near a lot of my stuff, but we've done really beautiful whiskey decanters, and we're starting to play around with even more stuff, even getting a little into cocktail equipment, such as we do already have a limited number of really beautiful cut crystal cocktail mixers, mixing glasses. And then we have things like a little stem copita with little tasting caps. Yeah, for the nerds. We have our this used to be called the Canadian mixing glass, or Canadian whiskey glass.
Yeah.
Now we call it the mixer, because it started catching on down in Tennessee and Kentucky. You can put your whiskey in it. You can still nose and do the whole appreciation of the whiskey. But now you can also drop a big ice cube in there and add a mixer, if you wish,
Sure,
as they would call it in Scotland. We have the wee Glencairn. Look at that. Oh,
I've seen those. I like those.
Look at it. It makes my hand look huge. Look at the size of that hand. It's huge. And then, for some of you, you might have noticed back in around Thanksgiving, we had a limited number of the black Glencairns. We may bring this back, but never do that online sale thing again, because that killed us.
Yeah.
But we also a number of other colored glasses. But we have we might come out with some whiskey paraphernalia. That would be really interesting. But right now it's still a little hush hush. I'm not allowed to
divulge in anything just yet. So one of the things that's always kind of fascinated me is people's stories. Every time I interview someone, I always want to know, what's your whiskey story? Mine was, I was sitting in a bar one day and I was drinking Budweiser. We were watching a football game, and a buddy of mine ordered a Town Branch on the rocks, so I ordered one. But you often see this like, oh, well, it was my grandfather or my father or my uncle or whatever. I had my first sip of beer, or my first sip of whiskey. What's your whiskey story? What was that first sip?
Well, actually, my first sip of whiskey was not a pleasant one. I
don't think most people's were.
I was probably in 5th grade, and I was with my older brother, who's about 7 years older than me. And we were at his friend's house, and his friend gave me a little shot of Jack Daniels. And that tasted as if it was gasoline. It just tastes like gasoline. I couldn't believe people drank that stuff. And I didn't really have whiskey much until later. One thing I could always get at weddings. I could always drink at weddings, no matter how old I was. And I wasn't quite sure how that worked, but maybe I looked older at the time. And this is the 70s, and I was very tall for my age. So maybe they thought I was 21 or 18. 18 was the drinking age back then. Anyways, I would get a lot of whiskey sours, and I really liked whiskey sours. But eventually, as time went on, I started getting away from the sweet stuff. I didn't like sweet. Um, and I would drink, like Jack and Coke or Jack and Seven. I thought was better. And then I didn't like those. I remember getting really, really sick in college on Seagram 7 and Sevens. But I don't blame Seagram 7. I had one of those old deer flasks, those deer, drinking flasks,
Yeah.
the deer skin ones. I brought it. I made a whole bunch of 7 of 7s, put them in the deer flask, and brought it to a party thing, and it looked really cool. I'm in college. I drank, oh, dry, really warm 7 7s all night. I just got so sick. So I stopped drinking that for a while, and then one day, my Uncle Chuck and my Aunt Rita were two of the classiest people, I thought. Uncle Chuck always wore a suit, he always wore a tie, and he'd walk around with a Manhattan. And Aunt Rita was like June Cleaver. She always had a nice dress on. She had that pearl necklace, and she always drank scotch on the rocks. I believe it was Cuddy. I think she
Ooh,
really liked Cuddy
Cuddy
Sark.
Sark. Yeah.
Yeah, she was a big fan. And so one day, my brother and I happened to be in a bar when we got the news that Uncle Chuck passed away. And neither one of us were big whiskey drinkers, but we said, "Well, you know what? Let's order a Manhattan in honor of Uncle Chuck and see what happens." I took one sip of that and I go, "Oh my God, that's delicious." And that was really perfect. And it wasn't even a great whiskey bar, a great cocktail bar. And I thought, wow, this is really good. If it could be really good here, imagine if it's done right somewhere. So I started drinking those like crazy. And that was, I want to say that was the early 90s. And I started bartending. And right around that time is when the Beam small batch collection
Hmm.
came out. And I saw Booker's, and everyone said, "Oh, Booker's is really, really strong." Except that's what I want then. Yeah, I had no idea. Early '90s, even though I was bartending, there was no one going around training you
Hmm.
on anything. So, what proof meant, really? I had no idea. You know, I mean, nobody told you. You
Right.
just knew it was strong. I didn't know how strong it actually was. And so, anyone who remembers River North in the early '90s, the original Bar Louie, there used to be only one Bar Louie, and it used to be right at Franklin and Chicago, right on Chicago Avenue at Franklin. And it was open till 4 a.m. So I was bartending up the street. We'd go down there, and it was kind of industry bar. So they would give me I'd ask for a Booker's Manhattan straight up, and there was a 10-ounce cocktail glass, and they would fill it to the brim plus. It'd be like
Yeah.
a little dome. Those were so good, I would have about 3 of them. And so it dawned on me years later, maybe a decade later. I go, "Oh my God, that was 30 ounces of booze, and really strong booze." And I would have some horrible nights where, I drank them so fast. I used to alternate them with Tanqueray gin martinis, dirty martinis.
Yeah.
Loved them, loved them. Anyways, that was my big thing. And then a couple years later, I was working at another restaurant, same restaurant actually, a restaurant called Tuda Posto at Franklin and Erie. And one of the owners, I was leaving early when the owners told me to sit down at the bar and have a drink with them. I did, and he was drinking Springbank 21-year-old. This stuff was so good, and between the two of us, we almost polished off the bottle, which caused a little friction between him and his partner on this at this restaurant, because that was an expensive bottle even in those
Yeah.
days. Before those days, actually, oh man, I wish I had stocked up on that stuff back then, because it's really hard to get
Yeah.
that particular expression. But that turned me from bourbon to scotch. Though I still drink both, I alternate. And then later on, I when I became a master of whiskey for Diageo, I represented all the classic malts. Johnny Walker Black is probably still my go-to Scotch whiskey, especially when I'm on the road. Every hotel bar has it. Um, and then let's see. But I was representing Bushmills, so Black Bush became my Irish whiskey.
Yeah.
Bullet Bourbon, George Dickel Tennessee whiskey, and Crown Royal. So I had a nice little array.
Portfolio going there.
Yeah, I mean, at one point I was representing 60 different whiskeys, different expressions. Yeah, so it was a wonderful, wonderful time. Not so good for my liver, but great, great time.
So you've had quite the career in the spirits industry and had the opportunity to meet many people and share drinks with them. Tell us the most memorable experience you had sharing a whiskey with someone.
Oh, that's easy. I actually wrote. I think I forget if this was. It might have been for Malt Advocate magazine. They're now called Whiskey Advocate magazine. They asked for your most memorable location, and it was one time I was in Scotland at Royal Lochnagar Distillery, and we were up there for the Malt Advocate course that they do there. Not related to the magazine; it's something that industry professionals go through. It's a week-long intensive, all about scotches and primarily Diageo scotches. But we, we'd have breaks, and actually after say 5 p.m., it was all right, all done studying. Let's open up the cabinet. And this cabinet, if you go to Scotland, you've got to go to Royal Lochnagar, because Royal Lochnagar, their whiskey shop there is it's like the primo Diageo whiskey shop, or at least it used to be. I haven't been there in a number of years, but they would have all these different expressions of whiskeys. I would see whiskeys I was representing, but oh, wait a minute, instead of a Craggamore 12-year-old, here's a 13-year-old cask strength. I go, what the fuck? Or all sorts of stuff. Anyways, I was there along with a bunch of the masters of whiskeys from around the country. And our mentor was a fellow by the name of Evan Katnack. Evan was a master distiller emeritus. He had worked at 13 of the United Distillers distilleries over the years, like Lagavulin, Cardew, Craggamore. He was the man. He had been in the business for decades. And so we went over to the cabinet together, and we're looking. He sees a Dalwhinnie 36-year-old, and he started getting all kind of choked up. And I go, what, Evan? What's going on? What's the big deal? And he goes, Marty, this is the whiskey. I made this whiskey the same year my daughter was born at Dalwhinnie, his eldest daughter. And so he was all excited. And it was closed. It was closed bottle. And we go, wow, then we should toast that, shouldn't we? And so I drank it with the man who made it 36 years later.
That's incredible. That's an experience.
But what really touched me was just how choked up he was about it. I mean, it was a real emotional attachment, which drove home the fact of just how whiskey can have this emotional connection to people that you don't see with a lot of other spirits. You don't see people getting choked up about, oh my God, there's vodka. Oh my God, bringing me the tears. Or gin, or, and I love gin. I love rum, but nothing does it like whiskey. And and the other thing too, the thing about whiskey, and I think it's just because the aromas are they're so earthy. They're so of this planet. I mean, the first time I ever had Talisker, I shouldn't say the first time I ever had Talisker, but the first time I really, really thought I was experiencing Talisker was on the Isle of Skye. After spending the afternoon running up hills and standing by the ocean and dodging sheep poop I went to this bar and I was freezing. It was wet, damp air, and you go into the local pub, and I ordered a Talisker 10, and I go, "Oh my God, that's why this whiskey is the way it is. It's the perfect fit for this island. It really is. I mean, it smells like the sea. It smells like the island. It was such a great connection
Hmm.
that it's something I highly recommend to anybody. You got to go to where a whiskey is made to really truly experience it.
Yeah.
Same thing. Drinking bourbon down in Kentucky is always a fun experience.
Right. Yeah, it's just different. And for any of those who have seen that movie Neat on Hulu, I think it was Freddie Johnson, one of the tour guides, probably one of the most famous people at Buffalo Trace, said because it's bourbon and really whiskey in general takes time. It's a long process, so you want to be able to sit there and kind of savor that and take in everything that's around you. You had mentioned that experience was an incredible one. I also find it very interesting that it's not necessarily the whiskey or the beer or the wine or the whatever that's good. When I ask people, what's your favorite drink or what's your favorite whiskey, whether it's bourbon or scotch or beer, I asked Mark Kokel, the owner of One Trick Pony Brewing, a couple weeks ago. I said, "What's the best beer you've ever had?" And he said, "The best beer I ever had was a Budweiser on a train home from work after just a really, really long day." And this is a guy that drinks craft beer. He's a craft beer brewery owner. I tell people the best whiskey that I ever had was a glass of Gentleman Jack right after I proposed to my fiance. It doesn't have to be the thing. Now, granted, your 36-year-old Dalwhinnie, I mean, that's kind of probably the exception to the rule. That's an incredible one. But it's always just kind of fascinating to hear people's story, what their favorite one, what their favorite whiskey was. But I want to get to a question because I read it somewhere. Rumor has it that you bartended for the Chicago Mafia many moons ago.
Where'd you hear that?
Oh, I read it somewhere.
Really? That's an ink somewhere?
Yeah. So it was, I can't remember. I think it was actually anytime we're friends on Facebook, and anytime you get tagged in something, I will see it. It was I don't know if it was an interview or it was an article or what it was, but it was just a little blurb on the Facebook link. Martin Duffy, North American brand rep for Glencairn. We're going to talk to him about some of his crazy stories and one about him bartending for the Chicago Mafia. Is it true? And what can you tell us?
Well, I guess it's public knowledge, but so what was it? Back in the 90s, I was I was bartending at the Jazz Showcase, which used to be down. I don't know if it still is. I think it's no longer there. It used to be on Grand, Clark and Grand. And I didn't make a lot of money there. It was kind of a service bar. So I needed another gig. So I went over to Rush Street and I saw that the Backroom Jazz Club needed a bartender on the weekends. So I said, "Oh, okay, great." I go in, I interview with a woman by the name of Mary, and she was very nice, very sweet woman. And she hired me. I think I got a job right away. And it took a while, but it just seemed, we had a doorman by the name of Louis. And Louis used to come in, and it seemed like he always had a weapon he wanted me to hide. Now, I'll say this about Louis, and I think Louis is still out there, but I don't think he's.
Yeah, I hope he's not watching.
Yeah. Hi, Louis. I think Louis was kind of as we used to call it down there, a Guido wannabe. I don't know if he was really,
Yeah.
because also, why are you even bringing this weapon to work if you want me to hide it behind the register? What good is it?
Got some brass knuckles. I need you to hide.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Plus, it was a touristy bar. It was. You got that crowd that would come down to Rush Street on a weekend. You did have Jilly's next door, and the story behind Jilly's.
No.
So Jilly was Frank Sinatra's bodyguard.
Oh.
and
Oh, that's cool.
he started some bars, and so that place was a big kind of Guido hangout. Um, so you get a lot of these guys coming in, guys that look
Yeah.
like Paulie Walnuts would come in with he'd be going on 60, but he had this little skinny anorexic blonde girl, about 20, 21, hopefully 21,
Yeah.
sitting down next to him. I don't know. I just got this weird feeling. It's like, what the hell? And then one day I found out that Mary's last name was Spilotro. Does that ring a bell to you?
No.
Did you see the movie Casino?
Oh God, yeah, years ago. Oh yeah, years ago. But
So,
yes.
so Joe Pesci's character was based on Tony Spilotro.
Really?
Yeah, and so it turned out at the end of Casino, you know what happens to Joe Pesci's character and his brother? Well, his brother was, in real life, was Michael Spilotro, and that was Mary's uh, um, late husband.
Mm.
And now she was working. Her partner was, I forget the guy's name. I only met him a couple times, but I didn't really jive with him. Uh, but he ended up going to prison for something. I
For
don't know.
something, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, once I left that place, I left it. Yeah, that was it.
Right.
It was, it was weird. They were there, and I remember asking Louis once. I go, "Whoa, that's Mary Spilotro. Did she see the movie Casino?" And he goes, "Hey, we don't talk about that movie. No,
Yeah.
not since Michael got whacked."
Yeah.
And I go, "So Michael got whacked."
Yeah.
All right.
So
So
you've certainly had the opportunity to sample hundreds of different whiskeys over your career. I'm sure some of them have stuck out more than others. You had mentioned the Dalwhinnie 36 year, but I want to hear about the best whiskey you've ever had. Maybe not the best experience, but just the best tasting. But also, I want to know about the worst tasting. Now, when you talk about the
oh,
worst, you don't have to mention any names if you don't want to, but maybe give us a little feel into the best and worst that you've had, because you've been in the spirits industry for quite a long time.
well, yeah. If you count my I started bartending in 1990, and I started working with Johnny Walker in about 96. And the two overlapped for another 7 years. So I was bartending and working for Johnny Walker for about 7 years. Then I went full time uh, with Johnny Walker in about 2003, January 2nd, 2003. Um, and then did that for another 7, 8 years. Is that right? Yeah. Um, well, it's hard to say. I mean, people always ask you, what's the best whiskey you ever had? What's your favorite? Typically, it's the one that's in my hand at the time I'm
The
drinking.
one that's free.
Yeah, the one you're buying me. But um, I would have to say, I really have to say, I do look back on that Springbank 21-year-old, and I think that became my benchmark for whiskey. That's what I judged at least scotches by
Hmm.
for for a good long time. That was just amazing whiskey. That was like butter. It was so good. It was butter. Um, but and as far as I mean, and I've had a lot of good ones since then. But sometimes you have a great whiskey, and also too, I deal with a lot of small distilleries now.
Hmm.
For 7 or 8 years, I forget which is, I think 8 years, I co-produced the Chicago Independent Spirit Expo here in the beautiful Windy City. And so I would have an opportunity to taste lots of the new whiskeys that are out there.
Hmm.
Um, uh, and, you'd always come across a gem every now and then. Recently, I think one of the ones that sticks in my mind, if you have a chance, there's a fellow by the name of Colin Keegan out of New Mexico. He owns Santa Fe Spirits,
Okay.
and he makes a mesquite a mesquite malted single malt.
Okay.
Amazing. Yeah, I someone gave me a bottle not too long ago. Actually, I ended up having about 4 bottles of it, and it was uh, it was really good. I drank, and I don't drink at home typically. Um, I had maybe half a bottle one night.
Just to yourself?
Yeah, and that's a
That good, huh?
that's a lot. Um, Also, I still go back and hit up some of my favorites. Talisker Distillers Edition. Almost any of the Taliskers.
Hmm.
Lagavulin. Oh my
Yeah.
God, Lagavulin. I have a bottle of Lagavulin. It's one of those whiskeys where I don't want to open it
Right.
because I very rarely buy a whiskey anymore. I have so much whiskey that if I were to start drinking it now, I mean, I'd end up like Nick Cage and leaving Las Vegas. I just end up it'd be uh, it would be deadly.
Right.
So buying more whiskey is not something I like to do. And Lagavulin has gotten very expensive over the years. One of the
Yes.
things I really, really regret is leaving when I left Diageo. Um, when I left my position, I could have took a case of Lagavulin with me. I thought, no, I should leave it for the next guy, sample case. And I thought, fudge, I should have took it. Um, but as far as worse whiskey, that same story about all the whiskeys I get to try from all these young distilleries.
Yep.
Yeah, that goes for that too. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff. I tasted one whiskey once. This young fellow came up from Kentucky. He was representing a new distillery, and he asked me. I don't know how he got a hold of me. Maybe through LinkedIn or through a mutual connection, something. He asked me to take him around and introduce him to some whiskey people,
Sure.
and have them sample the spirit. He grabbed the wrong bottle.
Ugh.
He said, um, but I don't know I don't know why this stuff was in a bottle. It was so bad. It tasted like somebody had been ironing their shirt, left the iron on the shirt, burnt the shirt, and then came back and decided to wash that burnt shirt in the whiskey. It
Ugh.
just had this horrible burnt starch uh, flavor to it. It was horrible, and it was really embarrassing too. I think
Poor guy.
we were pouring it out for Brett at Binny's, the spirit buyer at Binny's, and he and we were. This was the first time all three of us were trying it, and we just looked and go, What's going on here? This ain't right." Um, Tasted an Irish whiskey. A rep over here wanted me to try it and give my opinion on it. Um, because he was thinking about whether he should carry it. They
Yeah.
sent him a sample. And it wasn't called Irish whiskey. It was called an Irish spirit.
Oh.
Yeah. And I couldn't figure out, I'm thinking, okay, does that mean it's not 3 years old yet? Because you couldn't call it a whiskey if it was less than 3 years. There was, I reached out to some friends in Ireland, some whiskey friends, and they asked if that was. I asked them, what's up? And they said, you know what? There's rumors that this one group was actually vatting some of their whiskey with Scotch whiskey.
Oh.
Yeah, probably cheap Scotch whiskey.
Yeah.
We never found out what the real story was, but that tasted like crap. Oh, and there's a couple of Indian whiskeys, blends
Yeah.
that, in India, you can call just about anything whiskey. And this stuff was a mixture of Scotch and something else. Could have been locally made whiskey, but, if it ain't Amarut or Paul John, I wouldn't Yeah, I
That
wouldn't drink it.
sounds
Yeah.
terrible. Yeah.
They have a lot of fake whiskey over in India. They have a lot of people dying from fake whiskey
Really?
over in India.
See, that I
Huge.
didn't know. Huh.
Yeah.
Well,
More bogus Johnny Walker Black is sold in India than actual Johnny Walker Black.
really? Because of
Yeah.
the price point, I assume?
I'm guessing. I'm
Yeah.
guessing.
Ugh. So while there's no wrong way to drink whiskey, there's certainly ways that we can improve the sensory experience of drinking whiskey, and the kind of where the Glencairn glass comes into play. What recommendations do you have for those beginners out there on how to properly enjoy whiskey?
Well, I mean, obviously, the old Pat answers any which way you like.
True.
If you enjoy, yeah, I've always told people, drink. I'm fine. Certain whiskeys I'll drink with ice. I'll add water.
Hmm.
Um, the one thing I won't do to a whiskey, if you see me drinking a whiskey with Coke,
Oh yeah, same here. Yep.
you'll know I don't like that whiskey.
Yeah.
I'm being polite because I'm. But even then, I probably couldn't even put Coke on top of a whiskey in front of the guy if that's his whiskey. You know what I
Right.
mean? That would be. Um. But I will tell you how to appreciate a whiskey. So, yes, you get a beautiful glass, like a Glencairn glass. Um, you can always admire the color of a whiskey, but actually, a color of a whiskey can only tell you so much. Um, Most whiskey outside of bourbon can use caramel coloring. Now,
Hmm.
there's nothing wrong with caramel coloring. People get their undies in a bundle
Yeah.
about caramel coloring. Caramel coloring is simply added to uh, maintain a consistent color.
Right.
A lot of people say, "Oh my God, I could taste all that caramel coloring in
Yeah.
there." Yeah, if you're tasting the caramel coloring in there, that's actually it would taste really, 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 really crappy.
Right.
I mean, anyone who's actually tasted a little bottle, I have some bottles of actual caramel coloring that's used in whiskey, and it's very bitter.
Yeah.
It's it tastes more like a very bitter dark chocolate than it does caramel.
Right.
Um, um, but you one thing you can do is obviously swirl. I've seen some people say, "Oh, don't do that because you're ruining the whiskey." Well, I always thought that was such a weird thing. The reason you do this, just like you see wine aficionados, swirl the glass, you release the aromas, you release the esters, get them going. Um, you swirl the glass, you can hold the light, not with this particular, not with the cut crystal, but with the standard Glencairn.
Hmm.
You can hold it up and, bring the spirit to the lip of the glass, bring it back down, you hold it up, and you'll see the teardrops running
Hmm.
down the side of the glass. Those are the legs. Faster the legs go down, the lighter the body, slower they go, fuller the body. This doesn't tell you whether you have good or bad whiskey. It's simply your eyes telling your mouth what to expect when you finally do taste it.
Right.
What's the consistency, the viscosity? What's that going to be like? Now the next part is very important is the nosing, and that's where Glencairn glasses uh, really does come up on top of just about any other glass. Even a lot of other whiskey glasses kind of come up short on this. Um, the whole idea of the funneling action here is to drive the aroma up to your nose. Now you'll see some people do this, stick their nose all the way in like a wine. But depending on the strength of the whiskey, that might not be a very pleasant
Yeah.
experience. So what you might want to do is simply kind of swirl your way down, do a little kind of crazy little landing action here, and get down in there and see where you're really picking up the flavors. Um, Up to about 90% of your sense of taste is your sense of smell.
Hmm.
So it's great. Make sure your nose is clear. And even if you think it is, it's not.
Yeah.
One nostril kind of shuts off
Yeah.
every 3 to 4 hours. So
Hmm.
you're really only using one nostril. So see which which little snout is actually on duty at the time.
Is on
And
duty.
then you can do a couple different things. So you start at the bottom of the glass here, and you work your way up. And you'll find that you'll pick up the bigger, earthier, drier character down at the bottom of the rim. And then you go up, and they get lighter, sweeter, fruitier, floral. They're all up towards the top. And then you can also do side to side.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, you want to do every point of the compass on the glass. Because the more aroma you're getting into your nose, the more you're going to end up tasting. You're going to identify these.
Right.
One nice little fun trick, if you're drinking a very high proof spirit, you can simply put the glass to your nose, but don't breathe in through your nose, breathe in through your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll taste it on the back of your tongue and not feel any of the alcohol, which is nice.
Right.
So again, give it a little swirl, and then take a nice little sip, a little sip. It was funny, I used to do whiskey trainings, staff trainings, all the time, both here in the U.S. and I spent 2 years in Ireland as a reserve brand ambassador for Diageo, which was fun. And it was amazing. I always had to hurry up and say, take a little sip. Do not down it, because everyone would just do this.
Yep.
Shoot it. It's like, never shoot it. That's it's just seemed crazy to me. You're throwing it way over your tongue. This is where you're going to really appreciate it. If you throw it in the back of your throat, fine. You might as well be drinking vodka.
Right.
And then, so I always tell people, if you're really serious about it, get a piece of paper. Write the name of the whiskey. Tasting books. Mike Veach, by the way, if some of you aren't aware of Mike Veach, he's a bourbon historian and an author out of Kentucky. Check out his blog. He does great work, and he tells you how to keep a whiskey journal, which is always fun. But one of the things I used to do at staff trainings, I'd tell people, write the name of the whiskey. Now write appearance, body, aroma, palate, finish. Then put 1, 2, 3 after each one of those. And then now just write to yourself 3 descriptors for each. Well, and it could be anything. You don't have to try to come up, oh yeah, it's bombastic.
Yeah.
It has kind of a little chupacabra underpants kind of huskiness. It's just to. I used to tell them, if you write out something that is even personal, and as other people would say, oh, nobody's going to understand it if it's personal. No, that ain't true. I've described stuff where, Johnny Walker Black reminds me of my grandma's attic and sitting on this big old, quilted bed that she had up there, and the wood, it was one of those old houses where the ceiling was basically the roof.
Yeah.
And so on a hot day, you'd smell the wood, and it just had all these same elements that I pick up in Johnny Walker Black. And you tell someone that, and they get a picture of it, and they think, well, that sounds cozy and cool and warming. So, Lagavulin, I always say it's like a campfire on a beach.
That's a good description.
Campfire on the beach after rain, wet sand and the sea and the roaring fire. So then the big thing that a lot of people, I don't think, understand is finish. So the finish is basically, how is it? Well, actually, it should be the simplest, because how does it finish? Does it finish before it hits the hump of your tongue? Do you actually feel it in the back of your throat? Do you feel it down here? Do you feel it right here in the middle of your chest? Does it? Sometimes a good bourbon will flare out into your lungs, or do you feel that boom? Every once in a while you feel it just hit your stomach.
Yep.
especially high proof ones.
Yeah.
That's your finish. And how long does that flavor and that feeling, how long does it last? And if it lasts a long time, long finish. Now, after you've done all that, put a couple drops of water in there,
Yes.
and it
Yes.
could be one drop of water. And then if that still hasn't changed, but it should. One drop of water is amazing. It's like taking a stone and throwing it through a bakery window, and all the flavor of the bakery comes rushing out, along with the baker asking, "Why'd you break my window?" So it's you do it that way, and a lot of people don't understand. I mean, people love high strength whiskey, and that's great, but no matter what the whiskey is, no matter what alcohol percentage, you should add a drop of water just to explore it.
Right.
And then that's why too, I'm not afraid of ice. I do believe big ice cubes will deaden a lot of the aroma, but at the same time, it does something to some whiskeys where it can actually give it a little more viscosity.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems to come a little more alive with a big ice cube. I'm a big fan of the big ice cubes. I do like those. The big
And
round
it's funny,
square ones.
when we do our event, when we were doing our events through the Fox Valley Whiskey Society, we would do these, bourbon tastings and Scotch tastings, Irish whiskey tastings with local restaurants in the area. And I'd always tell people, if you want to put an ice cube in, put an ice cube in. If you want to, but always try a couple drops of water. Take that first sip, and usually that first sip is always going to taste like jet fuel. Especially if this is the first sip of whiskey you've had for the night, it's always going to taste real hot. It's not going to taste very good. Let that first sip just kind of get your tongue used to the burn, and then start tasting it after that. Add a couple drops of water. Try with some chocolate or some fruit or some whatever. Just kind of explore it a little bit, because you never know what is going to really enhance that experience.
Well, one thing you can also do: never drink whiskey on a dry mouth. So all this talking, I should have had a little bottle of water, because just as water can open up a whiskey if you add a drop to the glass itself, if you take a big swig of nice cold, ice cold water, swish it around your mouth, make your mouth nice and wet, you won't feel that sting. No matter how strong it is, it will kind of open up then right on your tongue, which is kind of nice. So you could avoid some of that. I even did some of that with. During my time in Ireland, I would take Colm Egan around a few times. He's the master distiller at Bushmills, and he gave me a bottle of new make Bushmills. I mean, this was 84% alcohol, which is a little higher than what usually it was distilled up to 80%, but this is 84. And it was, you could only take tiny sips of it, but it was delicious.
I bet.
It was really a shame. It was really good. You go, oh my God, this is like pear nectar. It's delicious. And then, but then, you take another sip and you go, oh my God, this is like pear nectar. Wait a minute, what's wrong with my tongue? Your mouth became anesthetized. But a little water, and that would have helped it a bit. You'd still, 84 is still a lot. It's still high. No water is going to help you.
So up on the screen here, Marty, so it comes up as Facebook user. So I don't know who this is. It'll show it on the Facebook page, though. But someone asks, is there a web page to find out ppm on scotches?
Ooh, I'm sure there is. You can maybe check out Malt Maniacs. There's a great book if you can. I think it's available still on Amazon. Let me see. Where is it?
Oh, Brandon Morris. There we go.
Hey, Brandon.
Hey, Brandon.
So yeah, there is a book that I highly recommend. But like I said, it went out of print about 13 years ago or so. But the author's still out there, and I don't know if she's gonna try to approach them. But it's called the Scottish Whiskey Distilleries, and it's by Masako Udo. And in that, you'll find everything. You'll find the ppm before distilling and after. So that's great. And for folks out there who don't know what ppm is, that's part per million as far as peat.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the peat level? And if you ever want to experience that, you can go have like a Klein Leash, which is unpeated. Have any unpeated whiskey. There's a number of them out there. Glencairn. I mean, the vast majority are actually unpeated. But then go have Octomore.
Oh, yeah.
Which does, I mean, they're trying to always outdo themselves. But even those, you'll see. I had one that said it was like 220. I think that was the last one I had. So 220. Keep in mind, Ardbeg is about 50 ppm. This one said it was 220 ppm. Yeah, that's like,
it's like chewing on a campfire.
Yeah, it's like distilling inside a volcano. But actually, it wasn't. I didn't find it. I thought the first Octomore I ever had was way too peaty. I mean, just to the point where, look, I didn't buy a whiskey to, feel like I just gnawed on a piece of burnt wood. I want to enjoy the whiskey, and I love subtle smoke. I think that's why I like Lagavulin. Yeah, it fills your mouth with smoke, but kind of like a nice light cigar.
Right.
But this last one, even though the ppm was very high, that didn't translate into extremely smoky whiskey. It was very interesting. If you try the Ardbegs, I believe a lot of the Ardbegs vary in ppm, but I believe they start right around 50. Lafroig's about 40. Lagavulin's about 35 to 40. Kalila's about 30. Bowmore's about 22. Talisker, a lot of people think Talisker is very peaty, but it's only about 14 parts per million. And then some whiskeys, like Nobin, is only 2 parts per million. And some people don't even pick up the smoke and peat in that. And that's something to keep in mind. There's smokiness and then there's peatiness.
Right.
Peat is earth. It's dead vegetation. And so you can get that peat, that earthy character, and then there's the smoke. And then brininess too. A lot of island whiskeys, a lot of people confuse that. They think, it's very peaty. And go, well, actually, that tastes more briny. It's more ocean, more iodine.
When you say briny, basically imagine standing on the edge of one of those white cliffs, and you get that salt air, and that's that kind of oceanic kind of saltiness. That's what that brininess is. Brandon also asked, and this is a really good question for maybe somebody who's not really introduced themselves to Scotch all the way. Brandon Morris asked, what's a good starter/intermediate Scotch to have on your shelf every day?
Actually, I used to call Oban the Goldilocks Scotch because I always thought, island whiskeys, especially whiskeys from the Isle of Isla, are very big, very smoky. Some people, when they first taste it, they'll either be wowed by it, the fact that their mouth is now full of smoke from drinking this, or they'll just go, "Oh yeah, that's fine." And then you have a lot of Highland whiskeys that can be some are very sweet, fruity. Whiskeys such as the Glencairn, I always thought was a really nice summer Scotch. I always thought it had a nice little bit of like summer fruit to it. It's really delicious. The Glendullan, the Singleton of Glendullan. I haven't had that in a while, but man, I used to really like it. That was mostly aged in bourbon cask, but about 5% of sherry cask. That sherry cask gave it a honeydew melon kind of character that I really liked. And again, unpeated. But you got those, and then you got the Isla whiskeys. And I always thought Oban was the perfect marriage of the two. because there is a slight brininess to it. There is a little smokiness. The town of Oban is a actual harbor, and they used to call it the jumping off point to the Isles, and that not only geographically, because you can take a boat over to the Isle of Mull or down to Isla and Jura and up the way to the Isle of Muck, which is one of my favorite isles, at least one of my favorite isle names, Isle of Muck. But then you can, but it's also good. You start drinking Oban, and say the island whiskeys are too much for you. Next thing you know, you're drinking Oban quite a bit, and you'll love island whiskeys. They get you acclimated to it. And then there's what was the and the other end of it is Oban always had a nice little citrusy, I always thought, like a little orange peel character to the finish.
I'll agree with that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll agree with that.
I really like that.
I remember.
And so I think that's a really good one. And I think it's one whiskey I always tell people, especially if I was at a store event, I'd say, and they want to buy a present for someone they didn't know what to buy. As far as the whiskeys went, I said, Oban, they'll enjoy it. It's great.
So for those that are unfamiliar maybe with the Glencairn, I was reading on the website, the size and the volume that it holds. A Glencairn glass will hold approximately 6 fluid ounces of liquid. I see a lot of people use this as their everyday drinking glass, and they'll fill it up basically all the way to the top. What is the fullest you want the Glencairn glass to be in order to really enjoy the experience?
Well, I always think for Glencairn, the whole design of it is really to appreciate the aroma, to drive the aroma up there. So by filling it all the way to the top, you're kind of defeating that purpose.
Right.
Plus, that's a lot of whiskey.
Yeah, no kidding.
I mean, if there's no ice in there, that's a lot of whiskey. I mean, as you said, 6 fluid ounces, that's about 5. Your common pour is 1.5 ounces. 1.25 ounces to 1.5 ounces, depending upon who you talk to. But I always did 1.5 ounces. I think that's proper. That's good. That's why you go with a wee Glencairn. If you're drinking
if you fill that one all the way to the top, you should. Okay.
Yeah, this is only about 2.5 ounces. So that way you're just having a double, not even a double, straight up.
You mentioned that you lived in Ireland for a while, where the drinking culture is, to say the least, a little bit more advanced than here in America.
You would be surprised.
Tell us about your time in Ireland and what experiences you had while overseas working for, and you were with Diageo at the time.
Yeah.
Which is the largest spirits company. It is.
I think it still is. I know they sold off a lot of their liqueur brands to Sazerac about a year ago or so, 2 years ago. But I mean, as far as if you go to Scotland, they have roughly 30 distilleries, just in Scotland alone. And actually, that's single malt distilleries. I think they still have a couple of grain distilleries, and they're reopening Brora and Port Ellen.
I heard about Port Ellen.
Yeah, and then their Rose Isle distillery is amazing. It's their Willy Wonka whiskey factory, where they're going to make every different kind of style of whiskey. Mainly, probably it's going to be it probably is a very big workhorse for their blends, like Johnny Walker. They own J&B, Buchanan's. What's another big one? Dimple Pinch for some of you old timers. The old Dimple Pinch.
Dimple Pinch?
Yeah, Dimple Pinch. Never seen Dimple Pinch?
No.
It's a triangle bottle, and it has the kind of a little gold fishnet around it.
Okay.
It was a classic. It's I think a 15-year-old blend. I guess there's a 12, but I think there's a 15 as well. But it used to be one of the biggest whiskeys in the U.S. So did Black and White, which I believe is also a Diageo. That's the one with the white and black Scotty dogs on it. But anyways, I was a master of whiskey here in Chicago, and I covered a lot of the Midwest. I was working. I had 12 states that I covered. Everything from West Virginia to the Dakotas was my territory.
Wow.
The mayor of Fargo, North Dakota, presented me with a Fargo thermos.
Probably the only bit of merchandise that Fargo has.
Well, Fargo is a lot tinier than the movie ever let on. That's for sure. That was a one tiny town. Great though. I had a great time there. And anyways, I get off. I digress. So I got a call. A friend of mine who was working over in Scotland at the time had met up with one of the guys from Diageo, Ireland on a golf trip. And they were looking for someone who could come over and train the trade, not only on spirits, but cocktails.
Mhm.
And now I was never a mixologist. I was a good bartender. I wasn't a great bartender. I tried my best, but I was never Tom Cruise flipping stuff and anything. So I don't know what they thought they were getting when they got me. But they called me up, and I think as soon as they offered it to me, I said, yes. Go live in Ireland? Hell yeah, I'm coming over. And so I went over, and it was a bit of a culture shock. I had been over to Ireland a couple of times, and I really, really loved it. I love the people, and I still do. It's one of my favorite places in the world. I've been back a good number of times since, but I didn't really understand, just how they're kind of behind us quite a bit in a lot of different things. Like you couldn't find do you want speakers for your I couldn't find a decent DVD player at the
Really?
time. Yeah, so I bought this really weird one that I could never figure out. I think I ended up just giving it away. So I thought I'd get speakers for my laptop, and I go back to the store where I bought the DVD player. I said, "Yeah, do you have little speakers for like a laptop?" And they go, oh, you mean like stereo speakers?" And, well, no, not the big speaker, little speakers for a laptop. They had no idea what I was talking about. Oh, that sounds like you have to go to a computer store. I go, oh, okay. Well, I thought this was an electronics store, but I guess not. I guess you differentiate. Yeah, you got to go to a computer store. Yeah. I go, oh, okay. Where's the computer store? I don't know. And I go, oh, Jesus Christ. Took me months before I found a Sony store that actually sold these speakers. It was nuts. Anyways, I go over, and the drinking culture there was very different. Cocktails were very, very expensive at the places that offered them. Typically, if you've ever spent time over in Scotland or Ireland prior to, say, 2010, 2012, typically, if you ask for a gin and tonic, you would get a tall Collins glass, a little bit of ice, and mainly because they probably heard your accent, your American accent, so they knew you liked ice, but they give you just a little bit in this Collins glass. Then they pour in. Their serve over there is ounce and a quarter, so that's what you got. And then they give you a small bottle of tonic and a lime, maybe. And I go, oh, okay. And so I thought, I didn't know, because there was ice in there, I didn't know how little gin there was compared to the tonic. I thought they had pre-measured everything. Yeah. So I poured the whole bottle in, and I realized, oh my God, I've just drowned in my gin. Like gin with a hint of tonic. I know,
Yeah.
it's a tonic with a hint of gin. Anyways, it turned out that whiskey, everyone thinks, oh, Irish whiskey, you go over there. The big sales in Irish whiskey was mainly to tourists. Old timers would drink Crested 10,
Okay.
which was the brand that came out before Jameson. Jameson was, it seemed, anyways, to me, a very also aimed at tourists. The Jameson distillery was turned into a museum. It was a big touristy kind of thing. Powers was very big. but again, it was mostly older men drinking it. Even Guinness. First time I ever gone over there, all you had was Guinness. It was
Yeah.
great. Oh, this time, you saw a lot of Corona. Heineken was Guinness's biggest competitor.
Really?
Yeah, big time. And the two big drinks everyone was drinking was um, Cosmos, and really crappy Cosmos, uh, because they'd have a big 10-ounce martini glass, right? And but over in Ireland, you're limited to 2 units of alcohol. That's all you can put in. So that meant you could never have more than 2 shots of anything. So you had ounce and a quarter of vodka, and then you weren't going to put an ounce and a half of Cointreau, so you put maybe a half ounce of Cointreau. So now you had less than 2 ounces of spirit, and they had to fill up the glass with something else. So instead of just getting a Cosmos should only have a sprinkle of of um, of cranberry juice, to kind of make it almost pinkish. This was red. It looked like just drinking. You might as well have been drinking a blood bank because it just looked like you were drinking a big blood martini. Um, and that's and those things were expensive. They're really mostly hotel bars would make those, and they're really, really expensive. And I remember trying to train one bar there. Said they want to make all these fancy cocktails, but they're still using these enormous glasses, but limited to how much alcohol they could use. I said, guys, you could always use smaller glasses. Oh no, Marty, they think we're ripping them off. And we go, but you are. I mean, they're even if they'd even make the cocktail in this huge glass and using the right proportions. So it looked like the glass was half empty or half full, depending upon how you want to look at it. But it looked really, really empty. And they still said, yeah, I can't use smaller glasses, Marty. They'll think we're ripping them off. I go, what, on a glass? I mean, what are they going to do? Eat the glass? I mean, what's the big deal? What's good for you? The other big drink was the oh shoot, it's funny I haven't seen one in such a long time. Rum and mint and mojitos. Mojito. Yeah, mojitos were huge. That was really, really big. They went through tons of mint over there.
That's
That
crazy.
was, yeah.
Someone,
That's just how it was. It was very bad. It wasn't, Guinness. I worked at the Guinness plant, at the Guinness brewery, which was great because I'd walk through James's Gate every morning, and they'd be brewing the beer, and it smelled just like coffee. So it's like going to work in the morning, the giant percolator just it smelled great. But Guinness and whiskey was for the old timers and for tourists for the most part. And now they have a thriving cocktail industry.
yeah. Yeah, and Irish whiskey is really starting to bounce back too. When we do a lot of events with McNally's over there in St. Charles, and we do a lot of Irish whiskey events, and Irish whiskey has really started to kind of bounce back within the past 15, 20 years. It's nice to see all these distilleries getting built and going up and starting to offer more product. One of them that I really enjoy is Quiet Man, which is a Luxco, which is owned by Luxco, but they're a brand that I really like. You work for Diageo, which is the largest spirits company in the world, for something like 15 years or more. What advice do you have for someone who might be interested in getting into the spirits business as a profession, whether it be at a distillery or a brand rep? And what kind of background do you need in order for that to happen?
Well, I think nowadays the opportunities are plentiful, namely because, and hopefully, if the economy can get back up on its feet, a lot of these young distilleries can survive all of this. There should be lots and lots of opportunities. One, if you're a bartender, if you have any experience in the industry, Ideally, I think the best people to be brand reps should be sales reps from distributorships. I think you really should. Even if you're a bartender now, yeah, you can go, but I don't think. I think you'll have a rude awakening. A lot of people think brand ambassadors live kind of this James Bondian lifestyle. Yeah, there's a lot of fun, a lot of cool stuff, but then you end up getting KPIs. You get goals, you get targets that you have to hit, um, and you can feel the pressure on you sometimes. Um, so it's good to become a distributor. That way, you can talk about pricing. You can talk about you'll know what accounts need. Um, it's good to see it from both sides of the business. Um, but now, if you want to get into distilling, a friend of mine was working at a cigar store, and he went up to Few Spirits. Anyone who goes up to Few, and that's something you should do. How about go visit your local distilleries?
Yeah.
Um, hang out there, get to know those guys, and if they like the cut of your jib, they may even hire you. This one fellow, a friend of mine, Riley Henderson, really nice guy, was working at Up Down Cigar, and he wanted to get into distilling. He went up to Few and talked with Paul Heltko up there, and lo and behold, they gave him a job. He started working there. He started at the bottom, and that's the other thing. Don't expect to get your 007, your license to kill right off the bat. You got to start off the bottom, and next next thing you know, Riley is now the master distiller up there.
Wow. Climb
Yeah,
the ladder then.
yeah. Another good route to go is go work for a brewery. A
Mhm.
lot of distilleries are looking for brewers because brewing is a big part of distilling,
Yep.
or the first part of making whiskey, anyways. And then you have wouldn't hurt to take classes. And then if you really think you got the right stuff, you could go and just go online. I had a guy from India reach out to me on LinkedIn today. I don't know. I think he befriended me or connected with me, and then he asked, "Hey, can I forget how he put it. Can I communicate with you?" I go, "Well, I guess. Sure. What do you need?" He goes, "Can you give me a job?" I'm like, "Oh, what? No, I can't give you a job. I'd love to, little fella, but I don't have jobs to give out." Um, anyways, he that's the wrong way to go about it. Do
Yeah.
not just go on LinkedIn and ask complete strangers, "Can you give me a job?" Go to these distilleries, get to know them, find out what they need. What I know is that a lot of small distilleries, what they really lack is good marketing people.
Hmm.
People who will dedicate themselves to the brand, go out into the market, realize that you represent a brand, it's not a 9 to 5 job.
Right.
If you're a homebody, no. You got to go out there. You got to go out during the day, visit accounts, both on premise, off premise. But you also have to go out at night.
Hmm.
You've got to sit at that bar, introduce yourself to bartenders, find out who the decision makers are, buy people your drinks. Hopefully you got a little bit of an expense account so you can
Yeah.
crack open bottles and say, "Hey, have you tried this yet? You should." Located right here in the suburbs, you go get some. Actually, Paul Heltko, when he first opened Few, it seemed like for the first 2 years, I think I was working for Bacardi at that point. I was representing as the national brand ambassador for Benedictine. Yeah, please don't rush the camera. Um, and I I would see Paul out in the market almost every time I'd run into him. I couldn't believe he was married with kids. I said, "Dude, when do you spend any home time? This is nuts." But that's how you build a brand. You have to be out there and got to just push and push, and look where Few is now. It's amazing.
Oh yeah, huge. We spoke with Paul. Oh, I don't know, maybe 3-4 weeks ago. We just kind of got on a little Zoom meeting and it's kind of chit chat. We did like a little virtual pub and real down to earth. I didn't realize he had more than just Few. That it was kind of this spirits almost conglomerate that he's got, which was kind of surprising to learn. But he's done. I mean, he's done an incredible job.
Yeah, Samson and Surrey, I think they own
Samson and Surrey, and I went and picked up this, which won best whiskey. I don't know, 2020, best American whiskey or something.
And Paul, see, that's the other thing too. If you look at those bottles, it's something I always tell young distilleries. A lot of distilleries, they want to do everything, and so you go into some distillery and you'll see they have a different bottle, a different shape bottle, a different size bottle, sometimes different colored bottles for the various SKUs that they have. So if they make a vodka, gin, rum, tequila, and they're not using the same name on all of them, it's just such a dumb move, because you think, how do you build a brand? And you look back when the best-selling whiskey in the world, best global whiskey, Johnny Walker. What does everyone recognize about Johnny Walker? Comes a rectangle bottle, slanted label, always says Johnny Walker, always has Striding Man. They'll change the color of the label, but that's about it. You still know that's Johnny Walker. It's easily identifiable, and Paul did that with Few. You see that bottle, and you can always see the various. I mean, Few's always in the same shape. Even when he did that one, what was the band?
Alice in Chains.
He did another one before that.
Oh, there was a few that he's done.
Yeah. Well, it was a really crazy logo, but there was Few right at the top and that square bottle, and it was perfect.
Well, it's like with Jack Daniels. It was funny because we were watching. I remember if we were watching an episode of Family Guy or The Simpsons or something like that, but they were referencing whiskey, and you could clearly tell that the bottle was Jack Daniels, which is a very iconic bottle, almost ubiquitous and synonymous with whiskey. You see that bottle and it's like, I know exactly. You don't even have to put a label on it. I know exactly.
Well, if you watch, there's a great old movie. It's my favorite movie about the Titanic. It's from the 1950s called A Night to Remember. And it's much more fact-based definitely more than the 1999 version.
Yeah.
But the chef, and he was a real character. He was a real guy in the real ship. But the chef character is drinking, when the ship starts going down, he goes to his cabin and you see him drinking a whiskey. And what is it? You can't miss it, man. It's the long rectangle bottle with the slanted label.
Yeah.
He's drinking Johnny Walker. So if you go down to the Titanic, you can probably pick up a couple of old bottles of Johnny Walker down there.
Wouldn't that be cool?
What was the if you watch Deadwood, if you watch the episodes of Deadwood, you will see them. I had heard about this, but I never really watched Deadwood when it was on. But I ended up buying the box set and watching the whole thing. And if you watch the episodes, I had heard that they use the Bullet bourbon bottle.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, okay, that makes sense. Why go out and make one when, that's designed after 1988 or 1888 Pennsylvania whiskey bottle. So it's perfect, right? It's great. But what I didn't know is that they kept the orange label on it, which they wouldn't have had in the 1880s.
Right.
So it's a little bit of a, out of
period there.
Yeah, what do they call that? Acronism? It's an acronism.
Yeah.
But you'll see the guy holding, in a couple of scenes, they're pouring out Bullet bourbon. I thought that was great.
Interesting. So we're going on an hour 15 here. I wanted to ask, aside from the Glencairn glass that we all know, what other products does Glencairn make that we can get a hold of?
Oh, well, oodles. If you go to the Glencairn, it's glencairn.co.uk. If you go to the website, you will see umpteen different decanters. We have a very nice little decanter that's, I mean, most of the decanters are they're crystal decanters with matching cut tumblers,
Hmm.
uh, beautiful wooden redwood boxes. Um, Not cheap, but not really, really expensive. I mean, they could be a lot more expensive. We made a decanter for Jim Rutledge when he retired from Four Roses
Yeah.
and presented it to him. And the decanter alone, just the decanter, which had um, a Four Roses rose, all filled in with gold,
Oh,
with gold leaf, and really just a really gorgeous bottle. That bottle was alone. That bottle was $3,000, and then that's not counting the stopper and the glasses and the box, and
yeah.
so that was a nice chunk of change. But a fun little thing that folks might like is we have a decanter that's shaped like a pot still, and the line
Oh,
arm comes off, and that's your stopper, and it's all glass, and that can you can actually have that engraved with your name or uh, maybe even the logo of the group.
yeah.
We have a leather travel case that fits two glasses in it, a little cylinder and a little strap. So when you go traveling, you can bring your Glencairn glasses with you. We have the lanyard, which I have right here.
I've seen those.
Yes, sir.
I've seen those.
So these were really hard to find. We ended up finding a company in Germany that makes these for us. Um, but yeah, so you can wear it around your neck.
Can we get these on the Glencairn website?
You could. The only thing is there would be a minimum for to order. You'd have to order 50 of them, $2 a piece.
Okay.
So it's great if you want to buy it for the group,
Right.
but also there's a lot of shipping.
Yeah.
There's shipping costs to it. Um, you might, if you want to just buy individual ones, I recommend going on some of the local stores. If you go to whiskeychicks.com out of Louisville, I believe they sell them. I believe they do. There's a couple of stores, whiskey stores over here. They would just save you a lot on shipping.
Yeah.
But like I said, if you want to buy a bag of them, 50 of them, uh, I was talking to a fellow today, he might buy it for his brand and have it branded. You can get them branded if you like.
Yeah.
But that would be minimum order of 2,000. So unless you have 2,000 friends.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah,
can, I can barely find enough to fit up
yeah, right.
two hands. Um, so before we go, before I start drinking some more bourbon here tonight, anything else you wanna mention with for Glencairn or anything else you got coming up here in the future that we should know about?
Well, there was a lot of things coming up in the
Was
future.
yeah
Yeah.
yeah
Right now, everything as far as activities outside of online are on hold. But we're hoping to do. We're going to start looking into more and more stuff that we can do online. One thing actually would be kind of fun for all you folks, even if you're just in your home. But we used to do this prior. Is you can go to the Glencairn Facebook page, and if you're say out about or you're at a campsite or just in your bedroom, in your case, Mike, um, take a picture of your Glencairn glass and tell us where it is. We've gotten some really cool photos of guys holding the Glencairn glass and doing a photo through the glass, through the whiskey of like the Eiffel Tower,
oh
stuff like that, which is really just kind of fun.
yeah
So we do encourage people to go to Glencairn's Facebook page, or if you're on LinkedIn, we have a Facebook page, or we have a LinkedIn page, and add photos of your glasses, what you're doing with them. We may be doing. Oh, in fact, even that, um, we usually have like the winner of like the best photo will win a little something from
Oh,
Glencairn.
interesting.
But check out glencairn.co.uk and you look at all the cool stuff they have. I mean, oodles. Also, another fun thing for a lot of you whiskey aficionados, we have the Glencairn pins, the lapel pins, keychains. Ladies, we got earrings and charm bracelets. And for the gentlemen, we have cufflinks.
Oh,
Boom.
complete the whole set.
Yeah. It really is. It's great. And I like to, oh, we're hoping there's something I think I can mention. We're gonna get I'm wearing my Vendome hat. I don't know if you see that. I like this
Ventum
hat.
copper.
But we're gonna do a Glencairn cap
Okay.
and maybe even a hoodie.
Hmm.
So with a big Glencairn glass on it. So we will have some kind of Glencairn clothing. Not a huge line.
Well, yeah, right.
And I won't be modeling it. That's
Yeah, no.
probably
This is really the only thing you need right here. Is just the it's just the glass. Um, Marty, thanks for coming on. Thanks for telling us some of your stories. We didn't get to some of the questions that I had, but a lot of it was just kind of the Debbie Downer stuff about the pandemic and all this. So that's
it's all going to be good, folks.
yeah, yep.
Just bear with it and
Wash your hands.
yeah, wash your hands. Oh, hey, you know what I received today was Journeyman. Here's something. Here's a little shout out to the folks at Journeyman.
Yeah,
I just got a nice.
you got something today. The big gallon jug of hand sanitizer.
Yeah, from them, and I also got one from Sazerac, a big one, 1.75 of Sazerac. Yeah, and so I poured those into smaller little spray bottles.
Yeah,
I put them around the house, so hands are always sanitized.
Yep.
But go check out your local distilleries. A lot of them are still selling out of their visitor center, but you call ahead, you order, and then you pick it up at the curb. You can get hand sanitizer, whiskey. A lot of them some of them make really good gin. A great gin right here in Chicago is Chicago Distilling Company over in Milwaukee. Fantastic Finn's gin. But out in your neck of the woods, obviously Whiskey Acres.
Yep.
Go out to Blum Brothers.
Yeah, down there in Galena.
Shout out to the Blums in Galena. Fantastic stuff. But go support those guys. If you really want to have a variety of spirits when this thing is all over, you got to support the little guys and the big guys. But don't ignore the big guys. But those little guys really.
The small distilleries, breweries, craft or micro, whatever. Those guys really need our support right now. And that's a lot of. I work at a large home improvement retailer, and everybody comes in. Or do you have hand sanitizer? Do you have hand sanitizer? No, I don't. But you could take a 20-minute drive down Kesslinger Road, go to Whiskey Acres, and pick up a huge gallon of it, fill it into spray bottles, and there you go. You've got hand sanitizer, and pick up some whiskey while you're there.
Thornton Distilling down in Thornton, Illinois, just south of Chicago. They've been doing a pretty good booming business. Support all those guys. Go and stop off. And, it's a nice way to also kind of get a sneak peek and think, oh, you know what? As soon as we can come back, I want to come and visit these places. Yeah. Even going out to Journeyman, it's a nice ride and kind of get you
Journeyman's a beautiful ride, yeah. Beautiful little downtown area, beautiful distillery.
Minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great time.
Yeah. So Marty, thanks for joining us. Thanks for recommending guys like Bill and Journeyman, Blom Brothers. We were able to set up a schedule with all those guys. Thanks for doing what you do and supporting all those local craft distilleries. We'll have you on again one of these times because I feel like there's a lot more stories up there than you were able to tell us.
A lot of them, we'd have to make sure all the kids leave the room.
Everybody, all the kids are in bed.
A lot of it very spicy. All the dirty stuff.
Yeah.
The bastard.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for joining us again, even through that little hiccup that we had earlier. I have been Mike. I think next week we've got, or actually Friday, we're talking with Dancing Goat Distillery up there in Wisconsin. We're going to be sampling. I don't know if you can see it right there. I've got their Limousin rye that we're going to be sampling on Friday with their national brand ambassador. So make sure to stop by for that. Everybody stay safe. Marty, you stay safe, and we will talk to everybody soon.
Bye, kids.